Welcome back. We're going to talk about user stories. User stories. So these are some examples of user stories. Remember again, we gave an example there earlier on about the user stories. So in user stories, always remember as I would like to, so that. So this is an example. As an online shopper, I want to be able to filter perfume prices in descending order so that I can get the lowest prices. Another one for airline, as a Delta customer, I want to see different features on the home page so that I can decide which one to select. As an online shopper, I want to be able to filter perfume prices in descending order so that I can get the lowest price. So the same thing. So these are some ways in which user stories are written. Now, very important also, we add acceptance criteria. So technically it's a way to kind of test it and say, okay, are we really doing what we intend to do? So look at the example. It says, verify that when I click filter, it changes. Verify that filter gives lowest price. Verify that filter shows highest price. So these are some mix to kind of help you to test it. Even though you have your user stories, acceptance criteria is just the first level of test to help you build a very effective one. Um, there are some different things in user stories that we typically call sizing. Sizing is the way we kind of rank what we think the user stories number should be. There are many ways out there that people do user story approach. So we have the poker sizing, t-shirt sizing, white elephant sizing, time box sizing, Fibonacci sizing also. And we'll see some additional ones here. You can see here Fibonacci, t-shirt sizing, time boxing, white elephant. We would specialize a lot on Fibonacci because it's a popular one mostly used out there. And we'll get into some of the concepts that are cool. Story points. So before we get into the sizing, one thing I wanted to make sure we are very clear about, somebody could ask you and say, what are your consideration for sizing? It's tricky because many times to size, you think of some things. Three things are at the back of your mind. Number one, the risk, the complexity, the effort. So it might be complex, but the effort might be minimal. The risk might be minimal also. So those will shape your thinking to know how to size your stories. So if I ask you in an interview, what are your considerations when you're sizing your user story? I would like you to say, well, it depends on the user story. Some key fundamentals to consider would be number one, the risk, the effort, and the complexity of the story will determine how to size it. Okay, so there's no one size fits all. So it's not necessarily the level of effort that determines your user stories being high or not. So it's a mixture of everything that will determine what is being sized at the end of the day. Okay, all right. Excuse me. Prioritization consideration for user stories. In prioritizing your user stories, a few other things we have to think about. Number one, think about legal requirement, right? We think about increase in revenue, time saving, cost saving, brand recognition, customer retention. These are big deals, right? Think about it. It's not just, oh, I have all these user stories. I have to think about the regulation also. For example, if you are doing business in e-commerce business in Canada, you are required by law to also make sure the branding in the province of Quebec is also in French. So it's not as simple as, oh, well, I'm just doing business for other part of the country. You need to also make sure the website is shown in French. Now, the landing page should be in French. Now, if you are going to other pages, you might put a disclaimer that, well, the next page you're about to go will be in English, but the landing page will be in French, right? So that's legal. You have to do it because by law, you have to do it or else you get fined. So that's always a priority, right? The other thing, of course, increase in revenue is a big deal. Time saving, cost saving, these are huge deal for businesses. But another thing that is big is customer retention. It's not enough to say, well, I just want to make money. But many times you are thinking about the customer experience, also the user experience in many cases also. In the world of user story, I want us to use the word invest. Invest, INVEST, is an acronym that is awesome. It says the first thing, independent. Stories should be independent. it should be on its own, independent. N is negotiable. It's not a contract, so we can always negotiate with the development team. V, valuable. It must show and add value. E, estimable. It must be something we can estimate the size, right? Small. It should be in small bits so that we don't overwhelm ourselves. T, testable. It means your user story should be able to have acceptance criteria that we can test it. Very important. So those are good acronyms out there. All right. See you in the next class. Thank you.